Gonna read it in front of everybody?
Oh, I have to read this?
Yep. About Gil.
Okay.
Okay, here. We're gonna let Luke try to read. That's perfect. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here for our 2026 potluck. We got a special guest, Luke, who is going to tell you. He wants to be vice president for the So I will hold this for you. You got to hold that right up to your mouth. And you can,
Hello.
and you can tell everybody about our presenter, Gil.
Gil Jeffer. Bios. Gil retired in 2006 after a 20-year career as a senior scientist with Mars Incorporated when the New Jersey Institute of Technology approached United Atomic Clubs in New Jersey, locating about 48-inch telescope at Jenny Jump. Gil immediately got involved with the project. He now works for the Center for Solar Terrestrial Research at NJIT, where his positions include research engineer and data communications engineer. And his director, the NGIT Observatory in Progress here at Jenny Jump 2012. He was invited to an NGIT Antarctic team and is now made 8 trips, totaling more than half a year on the ice. His work in Antarctica is funded through grants from the National Science Foundation. Gil and his family are the members of Northwest Jersey Amateur Astronomers.
Excellent. All right. Fantastic.
there, and National Science Foundation funds the trips down there. So just first I'm going to tell a little bit about Antarctica. Antarctica is really big. It's 5.4 million square miles. It's about 1 3/4 the size of the United States. 1.5 times the size of the United States if you count Alaska and Hawaii. It's also very big when it gets ice. In 2014, it was a record year for ice and went up to 7.7 million square miles. Also, when you see this ice, you get an idea why you can't get there in the winter except by plane. And even then, it's kind of dicey. It depends where you're going. So this one has a lot of text on it. Sorry about that. But it gets cold there. Right now, I just looked a little while ago, it was 67 below, but the record at South Pole was 129 below. Actually, that was at Vostok. And the average year-round temperature at Pole is 57 below zero, summer and winter, if you average it together. It's a lot of ice. It's really thick. The South Pole is at 9,300 foot altitude, and 900 feet or 9,000 feet of that is ice. There's only 300 foot of continent. It's very dry. It's actually considered a desert, and it's very windy. Highest sustained wind is 199 miles an hour. Right outside of McMurdo, there's a station for the communications called Black Island, and they had sustained 230 mile an hour winds, but it only lasted for a couple hours. So it's pretty bad. Vostok, which is the Russian station, has 50 miles an hour is their average wind speed. So when we have 50 mile an hour gusts here, just imagine that being your average. Also very high. It's a very high continent, a lot of mountains, but most of the mountains are below the ice because the ice is so thick. The ice being over 1.2 miles thick, but 3 miles thick in places. Also very lonely. There's not many people there. In the summer, there's up to 5,000 people over all the stations and from all the different countries. But in winter, it's much, much lower. For example, at the South Pole, there's usually about 145 people, but in the winter, there's about 40. And at McMurdo Station, there's usually about 950 in the summer, but only about 100 in the winter. So this shows a little bit about places I've been in Antarctica. The two here, Jangbogo Station, I have not been to, but that's what Chris and I have been working on a project for that. That's what that equipment out in the back is all about. And that's the South Korean station. And they have basically a clone stations of what we have the clone station of what they have down there. Also, Ego 6 I haven't been to because that's about, they say, about 70 feet below the ice right now. It's kind of sunk. Too many years of not visiting it. But the other place, and Palmer Station, NGIT is going to start working on that this year, doing some of the fluxgate magnetometers up there. We haven't been to that. But these blue ones are the AGOs, the Automatic Geophysical Observatories. Been to all of those. Concordia Station is the French-Italian station. Been there. And the typical ones we go to, the main stations, are McMurdo on the coast and South Pole, which is the South Pole of the Earth, basically. It's a good distance from McMurdo to South Pole, 840 miles. But if you notice off to the right there, way down there in the ocean, there's the magnetic South Pole. The South Pole of the Earth and the magnetic South Pole, where your compass points, are two different places completely. So if you look here, these are actual readings that were taken starting in 1909 of where the dipole of the Earth is, this magnetic South Pole. And you can see it's just moving over time. They say it moves about 9 miles a year. And right now it's out over the ocean. North Pole is also moving, but moving a lot faster than that right now. If you look on the right, you see numbers 1 on the left side of that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are million years past. The black portions of that graph are when the magnetic poles were the way they are now, with the north being to our north magnetic pole, and the white are when they were reversed. So it has changed a lot. Basically, it takes about 10 to 70,000 years for the poles to flip, and they flip every now and then. Last time it happened was about 780,000 years ago, and over the past 170 million years, they flipped 540 times. But they do, like I say, they change so slow that the animals that basically navigate by magnetic, like whales and pigeons and things like that, they can adapt. It's a long time it happens. One thing that happens, though, when they're in the midst of flipping, which basically we're actually doing right now, the magnetic strength gets lower. And when the magnetic strength gets lower, basically we have more radiation from the sun that gets through. So that changes over time, too. And more mutations happen at that. So how do I get there? Well, basically we start from Newark all the time. Sometimes we go through Dallas, sometimes another city in the United States. I went to LAX, I think I went to San Francisco. But from there now we go to Auckland, which is the northern island of New Zealand, and a little puddle jump to Christchurch. Those are all done on commercial planes. So we usually go with United Airlines. And then from there we fly on military planes from Christchurch down to McMurdo. It's another 2,375 miles over the ocean. So the longest trip we had was 45 hours to get there, and the shortest one we had was 24 hours. By the way, that's to get to Christchurch, not to get there. You never know when you're actually going to go to leave Christchurch to go to South Pole or to McMurdo, because there's always something that comes up. So to get ready in Christchurch, first thing you have to do is get your clothes. And there's a station down here for the Antarctic program, and that's where we get outfitted with our clothes. And these are the requirements to bring on your flight. You have to wear the big red, which is good, supposedly good to 60 below, although I've never tried that. And the goggles and the mittens and everything else. And you have to wear them on a plane. Everything except the balaclava and the gloves you can carry with you, but everything else you have to have with you and be wearing when you get on a plane. There's a reason for that, which I'll get to later. So when you get there, the first thing at Christchurch that you do is get your baggage separated. There's 2 bags you get. One has your emergency cold weather clothing, and the other one is called your boomerang bag. The regular luggage that you bring down there, you basically give up right off the bat, and you don't see that again until you get to McMurdo. So the cold weather clothing you take on a plane with you, the boomerang bag you take on a plane with you, and there's a reason for that too. We have the TSA, Transportation Security Association, or what is it called? Administration. Down in Christchurch, they have another one. I think their initials, they didn't think these through. So somebody wasn't thinking too much when they did that. But there's a couple different ways of getting down there. One is by a C-130 Hercules. That's an 8-hour flight to get down there. They're old planes. They average between 30 and 50 years old at this point. They rattle, they shake. There's always a guy running around with a flashlight checking the hydraulic lines to make sure they're not leaking. And they're loud and they vibrate like crazy, and they're slow. That's why it takes 8 hours. Also quite crowded in that plane. It's not as big as you think, and there's usually a lot of people and a lot of luggage going down. But sometimes it gets a lot worse than that. Imagine an 8-hour flight on a commercial plane where you have to actually interleave your legs with your passengers. Sitting there like that for 8 hours. No fun. The thing you really want to get is the flight on a C-17, a much bigger plane. Only a 5.5-hour flight, a lot quieter, doesn't shake, doesn't rattle, and they seem to be put together a lot better. Nobody running around with flashlights checking on things. When you go there, a lot of times you have regular seats. It looks kind of nice. You pack in there, a lot of people. But you can get a lot of weird things, too, that come with you. The first time down there, I was next to two 26,000-pound generators. And some people have really weird things they come down with. So you never know what's going to be on a plane with you. That's one of the Traverse tractors, which you'll see later. But yeah, you usually don't get these on commercial flights. So I mentioned a boomerang bag. There's a reason for that. All flights that take off from Christchurch don't necessarily make it to McMurdo. I actually put my GPS on and recorded this flight. We had last flight down there last time I was down there, we had 2 boomerang flights where we had to go part way and turn around. And this last one was 5.5 hours out. So 11 hours after we took off from Christchurch Airport, we landed at Christchurch Airport. 11 hours later. Basically what happens is if the weather turns bad in McMurdo during that flight, they won't take a chance, because it's not like here where you have a lot of alternative airports you can land at. You just have basically one place, and that's it. And if it's bad, you're not going to land there. So we turned around, we came back. We were, according to the pilot, we were 10 minutes from the point of safe return, which a lot of people call a point of no return. After you pass that point, you don't have enough fuel to get back. So they try to make sure they know before that. But actually, some people have gone beyond that and not made it. McMurdo is actually on Ross Island. It's not actually in Antarctica. That's Antarctica. McMurdo's over here. You can see the station there. It's right near the New Zealand station, which is Scott Base. They're about 3 kilometers apart. This is Ross Ice Shelf is permanent sea ice. It never melts. Here it gets completely frozen, but melts during the end of the summer, by the end of the summer. When we fly in, we fly over a little bit of the island, of Antarctica, I mean, and you can see some beautiful terrain. Basically, this is the Transantarctic Mountains poking up through the snow, and it just looks like some surreal kind of painting. It's actually pictures I took out of the portal on the plane. They're just beautiful. So when you arrive at McMurdo, we land at Willie Field, which is actually called Williams Field, but nobody calls it that. And there's 24 feet of compacted snow sitting on top of 100 feet of ice, which is sitting on top of over 1,800 feet of water. And it's perfect place to land. We didn't always land there, though. The first airport we went to was actually the ice runway. The first year I went down there in 2012. And what they'd do is they'd actually take tractors and drag the airport out there, drag the conning tower and everything else they needed out on the ice during the beginning of winter. And then when summer came, they'd drag it back on land. Apparently somebody thought, this is ridiculous. We have the permanent ice down here. Let's build our stuff down there. They had Pegasus Field, which is now closed. I'll get to that. And the reason it's closed is because Black Island here is volcanic island with very little snow on it. So the winds are such that it blew all this volcanic dust over Pegasus Field, and the black absorbed the sunlight, and it got too soft. So there was always all sorts of maintenance to do to Pegasus Field, so they finally closed it. Phoenix Field is the newest one. That can take C-17s. That's a really nice field. And Williams Field is where most of the in and out on the C-130s go. When you get there, you get on one of the weird Antarctica vehicles. There's a lot of really weird ones down there. The first one is the Delta. That's the one you don't want to get back on to ride. It has no suspension except for the tires. Even on that little bit of snow, it's bumpy as could be. And they're very old. They're about 50 years old. They're 200 horsepower, and it goes 7.2 miles an hour, period. In low gear, it does 1.5. So it takes a long time even to get from the airfield back in. The next one is Ivan the Terrabus. They just retired this last year. It's 64,000 pounds, 300 horsepower, and it's really nice inside. That was in service since 1995. It's 46 feet long, very comfortable, wood paneling inside, really nice. One of the oddest ones you get onto is the Crest. It's 103 feet long and weighs 50 tons. So it carries 66 passengers, though, and can go 25 miles an hour, although they don't go anywhere near that because it tears up the road. by road I mean snow. There's really no roads. So once you get to onto the island itself, you can see what Antarctica looks like. It actually, this is a view from the summit of Observatory Hill. This was established in 1956 by the Navy. It was actually a Navy base up until 1993 for Operation Deep Freeze. And this is a view from the other side. In the back you can see Observation Hill, which is called Obs Hill. On the top of that is a cross. That cross was put there in 1913 when Scott's expedition died on their way back from the South Pole. And the men that were left from the Terra Nova expedition put this cross up kind of in memory of them. In the background there you can see Willie Field out on the ice. So once you get in there and you start getting, now you get your luggage and then your training begins. There's a lot of training. It's the same training every year. When I go down there, I have to get a physical exam at the beginning of every year, and they do the exact same physical exam every year, which kind of makes sense because your health changes. But one thing they test every year is your blood type. That doesn't change, but they test it every year. Kind of weird things, and it's like the weather or like the rest of the training is kind of all very repetitive. But I guess it's good to be reminded. First thing you learn a little bit is about the weather. They have condition 3, condition 2, and condition 1. Condition 3 is normal weather. That's where it's kind of nice out. Like today is condition 1 there, 67 below, but big deal. It's not really too windy or anything else. You can go and do anything. You're not restricted on anything. Condition 2 is you have visibility a little bit low, and there's certain things that they say not to do. For example, planes won't come in or take off then, or you also won't be able to go out to the airfield to begin with. Condition 3 is when things get really wild. Condition 3, you'll have wind chill below 100 degrees below zero, visibility less than 100 feet. That's only the beginning of training. The rest of the training are all these different phenomenal lectures on everything from light vehicle walk around to outdoor safety to altitude training to you name it. There's so many things you have to go through. And you do these every year. And you do them, most of them at the chalet right there. There's a lot of different things you can see here in the picture. These are the major parts of the town. I call it a town of McMurdo. McMurdo is really the logistics hub of all the 3 sites in Antarctica, the United States sites. Everything comes into there and everything leaves from there. You don't typically go anywhere else. You don't go directly to the South Pole, for instance. Over on the right there, these brown buildings are dormitories. The blue one here is Building 155. That's also a dormitory on the right, but also the galley on the left. These are all workshops all through here, because you need everything that you need up here, you need down there. You have to have diesel mechanics, you have to have electricians, carpenters, people that take care of baking, people that take care of sewage, people that take care of absolutely everything that you do here. There's no Home Depot to go to, so all the equipment has to be there, so you can use that too. In the back here, this is the hospital. So a little close-up of the hospital. That's the hospital at McMurdo. Part of the reason probably you have to do the physical exam before you go down there is that hospital. But it actually isn't as bad as it looks. The ambulance, by the way, is a pickup truck as near as I can tell. So going inside, it's kind of clean. There's a pharmacy, pretty well stocked. There's also a dentist chair. The odd part is they don't have a dentist. That nurse I got to know pretty well. She was kind of nice. She told me a story of a guy came in there and he had a bad infection in his tooth. The tooth was loose, and I figured they couldn't get him back to Christ Church to get it looked at, so they're going to have to pull it there. And he got in that chair, and the doctor is there, and he says, I got to tell you, I'm really, really afraid of dentists. The doctor said, don't worry, I'm not a dentist. So there's a lot of humor down there, and you find it all over. I started collecting some of the signs down there when I was there. I like, especially like the McMurdo Fuels one. The people that take care of the fuel there, you can smell us coming. And also the in case of fire, exit the building before tweeting about it. But people do have a very good sense of humor down there. I don't know if it's just they pick people that have a good sense of humor, or being down there gives you one. But pretty well, everybody down there is very pleasant to work with. There are very few bad apples. So Arrival Heights is where I work there, which is up above McMurdo, up on a hill. And it's that white building right there is the United States one. This is the New Zealand one. And basically that's where we have all our scientific instruments. It gets very, very windy up there. So when you have things up there, you have to kind of tie them down so they don't blow away. Like your shipping containers have to be strapped to concrete blocks, and even your drums of anything down there. Inside of there is not just our equipment, it's equipment from a lot of different universities there that we have set up. Our stuff is on the right. This is our stuff over here for monitoring space weather. And that's our artificial intelligence right there. Food there is pretty good. At McMurdo and South Pole both, you get really decent food. I think that's one of the perks of being down there. They want to keep people happy. They have very good cooks, and the cooks always try to outdo each other because there's more than one cook down there, of course, because of the size of the station. And they'll really go out of their way to make good food to eat. Animals down there. First off, no polar bears down south. They're all up north. Second thing is you do see penguins. They typically follow the end of the retreating ice as summer comes on. The emperor penguins, the ones over here, can get up to 4 feet tall. That's a pretty darn big bird. None of the animals down there are afraid of humans. In fact, they pay very little attention to them. The other thing are the Adelie penguins. They're smaller, and the Weddell seals, which are just really odd creatures. They come through when the ice starts to break up, they come through cracks in the ice. Ignore everything I last said. Okay. Hi, I'm Gil. So yeah, skua have gotten to the point where if you go outside with food, you have to be very careful with it so they don't hit you. And they typically work in pairs. So one will come down and smack you, and when it hits you, your food hits the ground, the other one will come pick it up, and they both fly off with it. But anyhow, once we're done with that, well, now we're going to head to the pole. So we'll go to the pole by tractor. Not the usual way to get to the pole, but to get equipment to the South Pole is pretty hard. You usually use a LC-130 plane, but they can only take so much weight, and they only can take things that are just so big. So the other way to get there is take a bunch of farm equipment, convert it so that it works in Antarctica, and drive it 1,030 miles to get from McMurdo over the ice sheet all the way to the South Pole up the glacier. And this is one of those trains with them. You can see this is a nice fuzzy picture, by the way. I love this. You can see they're pulling something. What they're pulling is fuel. Every one of those is fuel. And here they're going across the ice sheet. They haven't gotten to the glacier yet. Once they get to the glacier, things get kind of dicey because it's very steep. But you can see here what it looks like when they're pulling the fuel. They're actually in bags. They have basically these big bags of fuel that they're dragging, and each one of those bags holds about 3,000 gallons of fuel. Over the season, there's 3 traverses to pull. It used to be fewer, but now they've got it down pat. And they bring about 300,000 gallons of fuel over the summer up to pull. And they take about 540,000 pounds of equipment and cargo up there. Interesting things I found out. They used to use all tan ones, and now they're switching over to black. They found out the black ones, they can hold 58% more weight. Just the reason being that the black ones absorb the sun. Remember, it's sunlight 24 hours a day there. You get a little warm, so they tend to melt the ice underneath a little bit, just like a skater's skate does on a pond. And it makes it a lot easier for the tractor to pull. So they basically use a polycarbonate underneath, basically like a cutting board that they drag it on. And that's one tractor's load. They use about 6,000 gallons of fuel per tractor to get the pole. And there's another view of them coming in. And you can see they carry their own living quarters and their own kitchen with them. I got a chance to drive one of these things for a little bit. I didn't go far, I didn't go fast, but it was really kind of a blast just being able to do it. They're really huge. When they get to where the glacier starts going up like that, you get crevasses in the snow, or the snow kind of just, if you think of it, is kind of snowy ice, and it kind of breaks over the edge. And they can be up to 900 feet deep. So you don't want to fall into them. So what they have is the lead vehicle, when they're near that area, has a ground penetrating radar. And the ground penetrating radar looks for those holes in the snow, because most of the time they're covered up with snow, like a bridge, a snow bridge. But obviously when the tractor would go over the top of it, they'd fall right through. When they do find them, they tend to blow them up or plow snow into them. I have no idea why they put a ladder down into that one, unless somebody dropped something down there, but it seems kind of strange. But it's pretty exciting, that traverse. It takes them about a month to get to pole. It takes them a lot less time going back, because all they're carrying back is garbage. It's not heavy. Thank goodness for coffee. So where they go, they hit some places where they hit a lot of snow, and they stop overnight. They can get completely snowed in, and then they have to use their own equipment to plow themselves out to go for the rest of the way. Now, the other way to go to pole is where we get started. First thing we start is with Happy Camper. Since I'm going to pole, basically I have to show that I can do all the things I need to do once I get there. So Happy Camper is that. Basically what you do is you get all your equipment that you're going to use at pole and deep field, and you take it out somewhere on the ice and take a nice long walk with it and set up your tents. So we have our mountaineer, the guy that goes with us. He's the guy in a yellow, whatever the heck that is, sweatshirt. And we set up our tents to make sure not just that we can do it and that we have the skills to do it, but that we have all the equipment we need. We didn't forget tent stakes. The tents aren't broken, they don't have rips in them or anything like that. Then we get on one of our vehicles, great vehicles, and drive back, and now we get on to a LC-130 to go to the South Pole. LC-130 is very much like a C-130, except that instead of wheels, it has skis and wheels. Because at the South Pole, the snow is not as compacted as it is on the Ross Sea. So to make sure they don't sink in, they put the skis down. They actually land on skis. There's talk that they've done such a good job with that runway that they could actually take a C-17 to South Pole, but nobody dares try it, because if they do get stuck there, well, it's not coming back. That's it. And again, we go over the Transantarctic Mountains, over a bigger place on them, and they're just beautiful. You can see the glaciers start going down through the mountains. You can see where it starts forming. We have a big pool of snow, and it basically starts breaking off. This would be where the crevasses are, and they're flowing away. And they just flow like a river of snow and ice. You finally land there. It's called, by the way, the South Pole Station is called NPX, which confuses the heck out of a lot of people. It's not North Pole. It's Navy Pole Expedition. That's what it stands for. They're the ones that named it, and it kind of stuck. As I mentioned before, the South Pole is at 9,300 foot. 9,000 foot of that is ice. Only 300 foot of station. When the plane comes there, the engines never stop, because it's typically so cold that they can't start them without trouble. They don't want to take the chance. If they ever have to do it, they bring out these heaters called, I forgot the name, heaters, and they hook them up to the engine, actually blow hot air into them before they try to turn them over and get them started. They're oil heaters. This is the South Pole Station. It's actually pretty nice. There's been different South Pole stations. There was a dome for a while. That kind of fell in. And now this is the South Pole Station. You can see it's got a kind of a weird shape. The winds at the South Pole are katabatic, which means they flow from high altitude to low altitude. So they're almost always in the same direction. Very rarely that it's changed direction. So the wind's always coming this way. The building's shaped like that with that slope on it, so that it blows fast wind under the station and hopefully keeps most of the snow out. So it's kind of like a funnel for wind. The station's actually on pylons and supposedly can be raised up to 24 feet. And they've been talking about doing that because now, when I took this picture, it was in 2013 or 14, somewhere around there. The snow is actually up to here right now. But nobody's really too anxious to raise it up because nobody really knows how or has given it a try. So just hanging on and let the next guy figure it out. But you can see it's a pretty big station. There's a dormitory. The third one there is actually in kind of a survival wing. It's a dormitory, but it also has a galley that's not usually working and generators that are not usually working. So if anything really happened, they can live in pile all the people in that one and live. The one on the very end is basically a gymnasium and a lot of different things like a fitness area and a music room and things like that. Over here is where the galley is, medical offices, administration offices, and the beer can. The beer can I'll talk about later. You can go from here down underground. This is the whole area here. You see the South Pole Station. There's maintenance shops, storage berms where things have been there since forever. Summer camp, which is basically going away, but when they were building things, that's when they had to have a lot of contractors in. That's where they'd end up staying. And then you see the fuel arches are under here. I'll show you them later. The ceremonial pole, which is the one you usually see, and a geographic pole. That's not the same place. Not the magnetic pole, the geographic pole. It's not where that pole is that you see in pictures. When you look at the whole thing, there's the blue dotted line is the runway. It's 13,000-foot runway. The Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory on the right is one thing I'm going to be talking about. Then there's different telescopes, different science experiments there. The main station, Atmospheric Research Observatory. And this is where the dome used to be that you'll sometimes see in old pictures, but it's removed, and now you can't walk there because it's unsafe. But here's the actual South Pole that you usually see in pictures. It's flags from the signers of the South Pole Treaty, and basically a cheesy plastic globe on top of a bamboo pole that's painted like stripes. But that, as I mentioned, that's not the regular South Pole. The South Pole is actually moving out to sea. The whole glacier there is moving out to sea at about 33 feet a year. And as a result, the geographic South Pole is not anywhere near that. Where you see that picture right on the right there, way out to the right there, is where the ceremonial pole is. So every year, the station's actually going that way. So the South Pole is not changing. The station's going that way, and all the ice underneath is going about 33 feet a year. So every year you have to move the pole. They come out with United States, what are they called? USGS. What? United States Geologic Observatory. I don't know. They come out there and they tell you where the South Pole is. And then we have a ceremony where we basically grab it and move it. So every year on January 1st, that's a big thing to do. And this is Wayne. Wayne was a station manager when I was down there for 3 of the years. Every year I make a new marker to put on the actual South Pole. And Wayne's quite a character. That's his Siberian wolfskin coat that he had made in Russia. And he walks every day or runs. I can't remember how many miles he goes a day, but some days he goes up to 15 miles. And when that traverse is coming in, they actually one day called up and said, "We think we see a Bigfoot coming." And he said he was out miles and miles from the station. But he walks, I think, over 1,000 miles a year. And he's an ex-Marine. He wrote a book called 3 Winters at the South Pole, if you ever want to see it. But he's quite a character. The Russians came there one time as tourists. And they usually don't let Russians in there. They don't really let anybody into the South Pole unless you're there doing science. But they were having a wedding. They wanted to have a wedding at the South Pole, which is really expensive. It's about $50,000 a person to get there as a tourist. So they let them in for this special occasion. And they asked Wayne to say some words. Wayne didn't want to say some words. But they pressed him. He said, "Oh, if you really want me to, I will." And he got up in front, and I'll paraphrase. He said, "Well, I've been married 3 times, and all I can say is every time was better than the last." Turned and walked away. So that was probably the last time I'll ever be asked to speak at a wedding. I don't know. I didn't do it. Actually, yeah, you could tell by just looking for the spin of the Earth, but I don't know how. Anyhow, once you're inside the South Pole, it's actually kind of nice. A lot nicer than McMurdo. It's a lot newer, being finished in 2010. It's very clean because there's no dirt anywhere. There's no dirt. There's no dirt anywhere. So you never have that tracking in anything like McMurdo. You're tracking in volcanic dust and dirt all the time. Not at the South Pole. But we have a lab there where we work. That's Bob that I work with over on the other side. That's where I was working. Where you get all your equipment ready to go to deploy. There's a community room with pool tables, card games, a lot of videos you can watch. There's a library well stocked. Kind of interesting. And mind you, people are there over the summer and they're not leaving, or over the winter and they're not leaving. So they need, entertainment. There's even a craft room, where you can make things yourself, and people make all kinds of silly things there. There's a music room. A lot of people down there are musicians, and they get together, and you can kind of hear that through a lot of the station when they really get going down there. There's also a nice weight room and kind of a fitness room. In the back of that, down below on that last wing, is a gymnasium for basketball or anything you want to play. A lot of people play in the winter. They play dodgeball, and I've heard it's vicious. They take out their aggressions. Basically, they've knocked out teeth playing dodgeball. Yeah, it gets really bad. Nice little galley there to fit all the people that are there. This is set up for Christmas. It's usually not this fancy, but on holidays they always have a very special meal. Like we'll have lobster and steak and things like that. I brought Atkins down with us. I put our sticker on one of the napkin holders looking out at the ceremonial South Pole. But there's also a lot of stuff below ground. There's fuel arches are under there, and equipment maintenance is under there. These were built flush with the snow. Those are drifts. And they're not just a drift there, it goes all the way back, so they have to keep moving them. That is a snowplow, by the way. That's what they use for snow plowing. To get an idea how big the drift is, this is next to the beer can. You can see there's drifts about, 40 feet high, 50 feet high. They're really high. When you go down underneath, you can go down underneath by going into those fuel arches, or you can go in down underneath by going down the beer can. And this is where things get really interesting. The generators for the station are down there. There's 3 generators. One runs, one in standby, and one just down for maintenance, or if they have to, keep it as a spare. They consume about 45 gallons an hour, and they produce about 275 kilowatts. They only have one running at a time. But the generators serve another purpose. They also provide heat to the station. They have a heat exchanger that actually heats the station, and it heats the rod wells. So I'll show you what the rod wells are in a little bit. But they provide most of the heat. They also have boilers if they need to for when the weather gets really cold, if the exhaust heat and the coolant heat from the generators isn't enough to make up for it. The cold storage is under there too. Remember I told you the average temperature is 57 below. So once you go below ground, it's 57 below. So all the food's down there. A lot of food storage. Ice cream is down there in 5-gallon buckets. I became a hero because they bring the 5-gallon bucket up at 57 below zero. People want ice cream, and you can't scoop it. You can't scoop it at all. I took a new 2-inch spade bit and a drill, and just started plunging it into the ice cream, and kind of whipped it up, and we could have ice cream right away when they brought it up. It was fantastic. There's escape hatches in the back of all these tunnels, and you can see they kind of get a little bit frosty over time from the humidity down there from people's breath. There's very little humidity from anything else because it's so dry there. It's basically a desert. The fuel island, or fuel arch in there, holds 475 gallons of AP8 jet fuel. Jet fuel runs most everything. Generators are run on AP8 jet fuel. AP8 is like JP8, but it's an Antarctic blend. JP8 gets turns to gel at 55 below zero, I think, 55 or 52 below zero. But the AP8, the Antarctic blend, goes down to 72 below zero. So that's what's used down there for everything. And the interesting thing is the rod wells. I mentioned that before. The rod wells are where we get water. There's obviously no free water down there because it's so darn cold. So you have to kind of make your own water out of ice. So there's stations up there, and these are tunnels that go under the ice, about 1,900 foot long. And then at the end of these tunnels is where they drill down into the ice. And what they do is they drop a brass plate down there that's electrically heated to make a hole down in the ice. Once they have that, they start circulating warm water from the same thing that they use from that exhaust recirculation, where they get the heat from heating the building. Continually run through there, and they start melting ice. And you can get about 2,500 gallons of water out of one of these a day. Eventually, that bulb at the bottom where it's melted gets so big, it won't get bigger because it's just too big and it will start freezing. And then they just make another one. In the meantime, when they're done with one of them, that becomes where the sewage goes. The ice tunnels themselves are kind of cool. A lot of them are carved out with chainsaws. Electric heat pipes keep the water warm. You can see there it's 57 below zero, about minus 50 centigrade. There's some odd things down there too. People put some like little shrines for things, like don't really know why, but that's one of them. The other one was this sturgeon that they put down there. The sturgeon actually came to McMurdo. The Russians brought it there when they visited. Nobody knew what to do with it, so they kept it there until it started rotting. Then they said, "Oh, let's ship it to Pole." So they shipped it to Pole, and somebody decided, "Oh, let's put it down in the ice tunnel." So they did. Also, some odd things down there, like the gravity station. For years, I didn't know what that was. It turns out they're actually measuring gravity, minuscule changes in the Earth's gravity, and by that they can tend to see what's going on in the Earth's core a little bit better, the molten Earth's core. Now I'll get into a little bit of science, but more engineering than science. I'll touch science in the beginning just to know why this is there. The Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory. This is really kind of an interesting experiment. I'm going to have, this one has a lot of text on it, this slide, but I won't dwell on it. Neutrinos going through our bodies right now. There's actually billions of neutrinos going through our body every second. But they don't interact basically with anything else. They have no charge. They're almost massless, and they travel at almost the speed of light, but not quite, because nothing with mass can go at the speed of light. So basically, they're produced by a lot of different things. If you ever look at picture of a nuclear reactor, you see a blue glow. That's from neutrinos basically hitting charged particles like electrons and boosting them past the speed of light in water. So nothing can go faster than the speed of light in vacuum, but you can go faster than the speed of light in other materials, but not faster than the speed of light in vacuum. So when a neutrino hits like an electron in water, or in water the speed of light is lower, it can actually boost it faster than the speed of light in water, and you get that blue glow, shrink off radiation. And because of that, we can actually detect them at times. They have the Ice Cube science. They have a lot of things here that they said that they can do with this. I have no idea where they got this. They must have spent a long time on this slide. But apparently they can solve the world's problems by finding neutrinos. What it really is the Ice Cube array is actually 86 holes drilled in the ice, 1.5 miles down. And the Ice Cube array starts down at 0.9 miles down to 1.5 miles. These 86 holes hold these digital optical modules that can record the light from these neutrinos hitting electrons down there. And they record it, and with that they can basically see where that neutrino came from that they caught. Very few of them get caught, high energy ones, maybe 120 a year. And also see the timing of them and the intensity of them. To record these, they use these digital optical modules, which have a photomultiplier tube in it, similar to the ones we used out when we were doing the LiDAR work, looking for gravity waves. But they're hung on strings that go down, like I said, 1.5 miles. So when a neutrino comes through, they'll see the little flash of light, time it, see its intensity, and it can kind of see where it comes from. Mind you, the neutrinos they're looking at are the ones that basically came through the Earth first. So they went all the way through the Earth and are coming up from here for the most part. They spread out these digital optical modules, these 86 holes all over. You can see that's the South Pole Station and the runway. It's a big area that they have. This is the first run of Ice Cube. They made a new one now that's bigger, much bigger, just started. So there's 60 miles of cables connecting these 86 strings to the observatory. Those two things, the right on the right and the left of the building, are basically cable runs. Those are where the cables come up from under the snow. The thing I found really interesting is how they drilled down 1.5 miles in this ice. There's two things they use, the drill camp and a tower site. The drill camp basically stays there all year long. It does not move. It stays there for the 3-month season that you have. You only can work end of November, December, and January. That's all you got. Otherwise, it's too cold to work. So they put these huge heaters in there, and it's just amazing when I looked at the specs of what this thing could do. I won't go through all of them, but 4.7 megawatts in thermal heating equates to about 6,300 horsepower. They pump water down there at 190 degrees Fahrenheit to melt the ice at 1,100 psi. And with all that, they still managed to push 2,000 gallons or 200 gallons a minute down there. Now, mind you, all that is coming out of a 3/4 inch wide nozzle. That shows you how, it's just insane what that can do. And fuel cost per hole, about 6,000 gallons of fuel. This is it. This is the fuel, the drill camp when it's running. A lot of humidity coming off of heating all this water. To drill the holes, they use 2 types of drill. The first 150 feet basically go down with this thing called a fern drill. The fern is where you have compacted snow, but it's not hard enough to retain water. If you put water into it, it'll basically go out, just kind of like if you pour water on snow here, it'll start spreading out. Once you get past 150 feet, is pure ice and optically pure ice. And that way it will hold the water and it won't flow away. So this drill here goes down to that first 150 feet, just melting it with hot coils of copper. And the next one is the one that actually has the nozzle on it that goes down through the 1.5 miles. It's all instrumented to record all sorts of things too, like all the temperatures, everything. It's all computer controlled. It takes about 40 to 50 hours to go down one hole, and about 11 to 12 hours to lower that string of 60 digital optical modules down. The hose for the drill is kind of insane. This is the size of it. It's 97,000 pounds of hose filled with water. So it's pretty amazing. The whole work they do to do that to me is just really impressive, because they only have basically 12 months a year or 12 weeks a year to work, and they have to get this done, get it all staged ahead of time. And the flights it took to get everything down there, I think there were 270 flights, if I remember, of the LC-130s to bring the equipment down there. And the other thing they had to bring was a lot of traverses to bring fuel to run all this. So when they're done, they drop them down a hole. They have about 24 hours to get it in a hole after it's drilled, because then it starts freezing up. And then they have to drill it all over again into the water-filled hole. So here, 120,000 gallons of fuel via the traverse for them, seven 3-month fuel seasons. And they work 3 shifts. They work 9-hour shifts. They overlap 1 hour. So they can keep going 24 hours a day building this thing. And they estimated it took 28,000 person days to do it. And they did it all for $279 million. That was the old one. The new one I just finished this year. I don't have anything in here about it, but it's bigger, and it actually has this one at the center of it. And this one is 1 cubic kilometer of ice that they're instrumenting. The new one is 8 cubic kilometers. They went real big time on it. So it's successful. It works. That's the big thing. Basically, one of the first things they found that was interesting was a blazar, which is basically a pulsar aiming at the jets are aiming right at Earth. And then the thing about the neutrinos is they're not deviating by electrical or gravitational fields, so they can actually look where they came from. They always had a wondering, they detect these high energy neutrinos, but had no idea where they actually came from because they had no way of looking. So what this system does is it will actually send it when they get a high energy neutrino, it'll automatically send out an alert to all the observatories in the world, and they can point their optical and radio telescopes at that area and try to see what the heck is going on. And that's how they found this. This is what when they basically do a visualization of this, of the neutrino coming in, this is what they do. From green to red is timing, red is later, green is first, and the size is the strength of the neutrino emission. They detect about 100,000 neutrinos per year, but most of them are atmospheric neutrinos, having to do with cosmic rays from the sun hitting our atmosphere. They're not the ones they're interested in. They're interested in the very high intensity ones. They collect about a terabyte of data a day, and of that they transfer 100 gigabytes through the satellite, and the rest is actually transported by airplane. At the end of each year they come down, pull all the disks out of the disk arrays, put them in a box, put new disks in, and ship them on a plane back to the University of Wisconsin to be analyzed. Well, a nice byproduct of this, when they were all done, all the spools for those 86 strings of DOM modules, they made spool hinge, which I thought was kind of cool. They've since shipped these away a little bit at a time. So when I was down there, we worked in deep field. We'd go to McMurdo, and then we'd go to South Pole, and then we'd go out to the middle of nowhere from there. That was called the Automatic Geophysical Observatories, and that was NGIT's project for Center for Solar Terrestrial Research. And to go there, we take a twin-engine otter out to these places. We go from 300 to 600 miles away from South Pole. So as we're leaving, I got a picture of South Pole Station. Here's all the scientific experience. Here's the South Pole Station and all the stuff around there. And here's the 13,000-foot runway. And you can see you're really kind of out in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing, absolutely nothing around you. Back to there, the EGOs, just to show you again, there's those blue ones. Now, to go from the South Pole, we go to EGO 1, 4, 3, and 2. EGO 5 we go to from McMurdo. So each one of these is a separate trip with a lot of preparation in between. Flying out there over the plateau is just gorgeous. There's nothing. It's just beautiful desolation. I think it's one of the most beautiful pictures I've ever seen, is looking out the window, that plane, and just watching this nothingness, and just realizing that it's just so unspoiled and just so pristine. It's just really neat to look at. But the plane can't make it to the EGO all in one shot. We have to stop for fuel. So what happens is LC-130s parachute drop barrels of fuel down on pallets, and then they send the plane out to bury them in the snow. And what we do is we dig up the barrels and fill the plane up when we need to on the way there. So that's part of a stop. All these caches of fuel have really strange names, like there's Johnny Cash. There's also a cache, I can't remember the name, named after his daughter. They all have really strange names. But we actually take the fuel barrels back with us to the empties. So you can see this is really another really comfortable flight. Interestingly enough, on one of those times, the fuel filter that they use when they're pumping out of the barrels started leaking like crazy, so they had to take it off and put it in directly. Well, it's not just a fuel filter for junk in the fuel. They're not expecting that. It's for water. So there's a chance that there was water in the fuel. So the pilot goes, there's a non-zero chance we have water in the fuel because we didn't use the filter. And if that's the case, we may flame out the engine. And if that's the case, we're going to take it up to a real high altitude so we have time to really try to restart it or find somewhere where we can land. So he took it up to a real high altitude. Mind you, these things are not pressurized and we don't have oxygen. And we were somewhere around 17,000 feet flying in this twin-engine otter. And I'll tell you, I really felt it. It was just labored breathing. And just feeling like you're just not getting enough air at the time. Because it kind of, happened very suddenly that we were up there. We weren't there. We didn't get acclimated to it at all. Pardon? Yeah. Yeah, but pilots have oxygen. We don't. Yeah, but they have. The other thing they have is heat up there, which I found. We don't have heat or oxygen, so it's kind of cold. But yeah, one of the things about going to the EGOs is you have to acclimate to the altitude first, And that's one of the reasons we go to the South Pole Station at 9,300 foot, which is usually a pressure altitude of about 10,500 or 11,000 feet. Being there for a couple of weeks, you acclimate to the altitude. So when you go out to the Egos where there's no other people, they're not so worried about you getting altitude sickness. Yeah. Is it what? Oh gosh, no. It's done. And we know exactly where it was. Because mind you, it's on the ice sheet, and the ice sheet is moving about at the pole 33 feet a year. This is more towards the coast where they move faster, and so it could be a mile away from where it was. And never. Just it'd be a phenomenal amount of work. So when we get to where we're going, our Egos that we work at, this is what it looks like coming into it. So there's our station. It's 8 by 8 by 16 feet station. And then we have a cache for fuel, we have a cache for food, and we have a cache for materials, just in case we get stuck there. The plane will drop us off, and we have a satellite phone which we can communicate with the South Pole with. And you have to make 2 calls a day, basically saying, 3 sols, everything's fine. You set what time you want to call, and then you're held to that time. If you don't call, I can't remember how long it is, how many hours, if you don't call, they'll send out a rescue mission just immediately because they have to do it right away because it may take a while to get started. If you do that and you just screwed up, you're never going back to Antarctica. Your whole team is never going back. So you really are really good about calling and saying 3 sols, everything's fine at 2 in the afternoon or whatever time you want to do it. Since 24 hours a day, it doesn't really matter when you're doing it. But we land there, and this is kind of what one looks like. It's a little box. It's got solar panels on the front and the back, and a wind turbine. It looks small, but it's bigger. Each of those blades is 6 feet long, and it provides about 1,000 watts of power, a little over 1,000 watts at a 230 volt 3-phase. This is what keeps the thing going when we're not there. It's basically these solar panels during the summer and a wind turbine all year round. We also use propane for heating and cooking when we're in there. I mean, not heating, for cooking when we're in there. Can't have that in the winter because propane basically does not flow at 40 below zero, so it doesn't do anything for you. But we have to dig them out, and one of the reasons we dig them out is because they have to be raised up so they don't drift in. When we first get there, we set up our camp, we set up our tents that we sleep in. It's usually, by that time of year, it's about 30 below zero, but you have 24 hours of sun, so the tents aren't bad at all. You're actually pretty warm in them. You bring your clothes in with you, bring your clothes into the sleeping bag with you so they stay warm. And you kind of start working on whatever schedule you want to work, because like I say, it's 24 hours a day of sun, so who cares? So inside, we basically start cooking. And the first thing we do is actually not cook, but we actually go out and dig some snow up and melt it for water. There's some water. On the right, you can see the instruments that we start working on. And then we have to raise the shelter. To raise the shelter, we have to disconnect the guy wires and make the thing up higher. I was actually exhausted. The snow was so hard, I actually had to use a carpenter's saw to saw the snow. And I just kind of almost just sat there for a while. I didn't want to get up anymore. I dug down the snow. But once you do that, you start lifting it up. You basically get underneath it, start digging out, go disconnect some more of the cables, and then you use basically winches that you use for a boat trailer on top of these and raise the station up a little bit at a time, and it's ready to go for a bunch more years. I have no idea. I've heard 8,000 pounds, but I'm not sure. I really have no idea. That was somebody else just made a guess. But really don't know. But the reason you want to do it every now and then is because if you wait too many years, when you get there, you've got a lot of digging to do. I mean, a phenomenal amount of digging to do. So that snow is very hard. It's not like the snow you have here where you can just put a shovel into it. There's no such thing as a snow shovel down there. You use basically garden shovels with good handles that don't snap off. And that's the biggest thing you'll get into the ground. The garden shovel. Once you're all done, you get on the satellite phone, call for the plane to pick you back up. If they can, they'll come out and pick you back up. The longest anybody's had to stay there is Bob and Andy, the people I work with. Once we're done after being there for a week, and it was 16 more days before a plane could come pick them up because the weather got bad. So that's why you have the food cache and the fuel cache there for occasions like that. But the plane comes in, we're all ready for it to go, and we head back. That works all for EGO 1, 2, 3, and 4, but not for EGO 5. For EGO 5, we're actually closer to McMurdo than we are to EGO 5. So what we do is we leave South Pole Station, we've done all them, we fly back to McMurdo, and then you basically get on a plane and go to EGO 5. Well, that all works really well if you have good weather. But if you land at McMurdo and the weather's not good enough to fly to EGO 5, now you're sitting on the ground for a long time. We were actually there for about 10 days before we could go to EGO 5. Now we've not acclimated to the altitude anymore. So they say, well, you can't go there because you're not acclimated to the altitude, and you can't go there alone. It's just 4 of us. So what we're going to do is we're going to fly you up to Mount Erebus, the southernmost volcano in the world, and you camp there for a week. So they got us on a helicopter. We flew up to Mount Erebus at over 10,000 foot altitude. They drop us off there. We set up our camp. There's our tents. And now we're on top of the volcano. Well, actually, not quite the top. We're on it's called Fang Ridge, a volcano. We sat there for a week. Once we're done there, basically beautiful looking out over Ross Sea. And then here's looking over the edge, climbing up, looking over the edge of the volcano itself. You can see all the gases coming up from it. Once we're done there, they pick us up again, and now we can fly on a good day, and we fly directly to the airport because now we know we can go. So we're acclimated to the altitude. We can go to EGO 5. So they pick us up, drop us directly off at the airfield. Right from there to the airfield, we don't even go back to McMurdo at all. We fly over the dry valleys. Dry valleys are a place in Antarctica where it does not snow at all, and hasn't snowed there for millions of years. It's kind of a weird thing. It's like certain mountains we have out here out west, be all wet on one side and all dry on the other. Well, it's kind of the same thing down there with the dry valleys. Get to EGO 5, dig ourselves out, raise it up, all done. That's it for the year. Now we head back to McMurdo. And on the way back to McMurdo, we can see this in the Ross Sea. Basically, our icebreaker has been through. The icebreaker comes through every year to open a passage. The main sea ice is melted. All that's left is the stuff near McMurdo. We have one icebreaker, by the way, left. They come through and knock the passage out. And then you can see where they come in here, and that's McMurdo's on the side. And then here's the icebreaker coming in. And that's where they come in with all the new equipment for the next year. They also, that ship will come in with all the supplies, being food, equipment, scientific experience, etc. They'll leave with that ship packed with garbage from Pole and garbage from McMurdo, and anything else that has to go back to California. A fuel tanker comes in. They bring up to 17 million gallons of fuel that they store at McMurdo. And then we get on basically our Crest vehicle, really that huge vehicle, head back to the airfield and get on a C-17 if we could, but it broke. Nothing works. The only thing that works on time in Antarctica is the galley. Every galley to the minute. Nothing else happens when you think it's going to happen. So the pilot came out, or one of the crew members came out. We were waiting in a little shed. He said, something broke, but it's not important. So we'll be able to fly. Well, apparently it turned out to be important. It was actually one of the reversers that broke. So we couldn't fly, and we waited a week to fill us back up and get ready to go. When we were ready to go, there were so many people ready to leave Antarctica. We had 111 people on that flight. It was all backed up. We were pretty well packed in, but a full C-17 beats a C-130 every day. It's just much more comfortable, like I said. We'd managed to do a Mount Erebus flyby, a place I had just been camping. We were basically camped down in here, by the way. But you can basically see the stuff coming. Yeah. Say again. It's continuously erupting, but it hasn't thrown out rocks since I think late 1970s or 1980s. I can't remember where. But Mount Erebus is one of the 3 volcanoes in the world that has a continuous pool of molten lava in the bottom of it. If you look over the edge, if you could actually see down there with all the smoke coming out, it's just glowing red all year round. Yeah, see the lava pool. So yeah, it's pretty wild. So that was it. There were a heck of a lot of slides, and now we're done. And thank you very much for listening to me. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them, but I probably can't. Pardon? They actually don't. What they do is they put them there, and the weather takes care of burying them. Yeah, what they actually do it in a couple stages. They drop it with parachutes. They drop pallets of 55-gallon tanks down on the snow. They don't all land in the same place. So then they send out one of those twin-engine otters out there with a crew, with a snowmobile. And the snowmobile basically gets the barrels and brings them all to one place and stands up on end, or tips them over with a bunghole on the top, on the bottom, I mean. It tips them all over, and then they stay there. And if you get to them right away, they're right on top. Otherwise, they're buried. But the pilots have GPS coordinates where they are, so they always find them for us. Yeah, not me. I've never been there, but yeah, they get into the dry valleys. They do a lot of work there. Actually, I think they did one of the things for looking at dry valleys to look for colonization of Mars. Some of the things they're going to do. No. The Agos are basically, we're looking for magnetic field lines. We don't want to be near McMurdo. Yeah, so we're doing that, basically looking at the magnetic cusp, the magnetic field lines, where they are, trying to get them in lines. If you saw, go back, I don't know about that. Yeah. I go back fast enough, I can show you. Oh my God, there's a lot. Oh, there you go. So you kind of see here, these are a line that way and a line that way. And Ego 6 was down here. That was the beginning of it. So that was it. So you get these two lines. So basically you get to see disturbances in the magnetic field over time by following them through those lines that V. So that was the reason it was there. McMurdo's way over here. Nobody cares about that. Yeah. By the way, the Egos are defunct. That was it. They canceled them last year. According to the Antarctica Treaty, we're supposed to remove them. Ain't gonna happen. There's too much. The only way you can remove them is bring a C-130 in there. For the high altitude ones, like the Ego 4 at 11,700 feet altitude, the only way to get that out of there is with a LC-130 with JADOs on it. Basically, the grant ran out. Yeah. Because it gets really involved. They had to come in. They first come in with the twin-engine otter, with snowmobiles, and they call it a crew that makes a runway. So basically, they start dragging these chains and everything over the snow, and driving over back and forth for days to make a runway for the LC-130 to land on and take off from. But there's a lot of friction with those skis on the snow, and with the high altitude especially, they need JADOs to get off the ground when they have a load in it. Not this. So they actually, yeah, I guess, interesting. I can show you a JADO takeoff maybe here. Oh, let's see, that would be there. Gotta be more organized. Oh, there we go. This is a JADO taking off, LC-130 with JADO. I wonder why. I can see it. looks really cool. Sorry about that. The size of it? Inside of it, basically, well, the best thing to do is bring toiletries like toothbrush, toothpaste, things like that, deodorant, shoes, pants, shirt, underwear, things you're going to need for a few days or up to a week. I made the mistake of having a couple seasons where I didn't need it and thinking I don't need this, and then I needed it, and I had no clothes. I had no toothbrush, I had no toothpaste, I had nothing, and it was a week before I got out of Christchurch. 85 degrees. I had the same pants all the time. And then it happened. The same thing happened when I was down in McMurdo, and I didn't have it because everything was loaded on the plane. Like that last one where we had to wait a week to leave. And as a result, I ended up going to this school, basically where people put their stuff they don't want. And I found a pair of sneakers that fit. Still have them. Pair of pants that really didn't. They were up to about here, which is saying something because I have a 29-inch inseam. So near as I could tell, it was like a midget or somebody. And clothes that didn't fit, but it works. But it was basically a once in a lifetime opportunity that I had the chance to do 8 times in a row, which was kind of cool. I feel very lucky. By the way, if you want to see what I was saying.